Hello there. This is a short video for the Advent series, and to help get us into that mindset to prepare as Christians for the coming of the Christ child. I would like to share with you a few personal thoughts, but to begin with, I was quite intrigued to read in the Sunday paper some comments from the Chief Rabbi, Lord Sachs, which really provided a reflection from my heart to revisit some of the values that society today has adopted, some values that I believe have alienated them from the spiritual coming, the spiritual preparation of the Christ child. And this is what Lord Sachs has to say. The late Steve Jobs helped create a selfish I consumer culture that has only brought unhappiness. The Chief Rabbi has claimed this. Lord Sachs said that advertising only makes shoppers aware of what they did not own rather than feeling grateful for what they have. And he goes on to say, he insisted that a culture in which people cared solely about themselves and their possessions could not last long, and that only faith and spending time with family could bring true happiness. The Chief Rabbi's comments are likely to raise eyebrows because he singled out for blame Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, who died last month, by likening his iPad tablet computers to the tablets of stone bearing the 10 Commandments given by God to Moses. And interestingly, I'm using an Apple to record this. Speaking at an interfaith reception attended by the Queen this week, Lord Sachs said people are looking for values other than the values of a consumer society. The values of a consumer society really aren't ones you can live by for terribly long. But he goes on to say, the consumer society was laid down by the late Steve Jobs coming down the mountain with 2 tablets, the iPad 1 and iPad 2. And the result is that we now have a culture of iPod, iPhone, iTunes, I. And when you're an individualist, egocentric culture, you only care about I. You don't do terribly well, do you? He went on, what does a consumer ethic do? It makes you aware all the time of the things you don't have instead of the things you do have. And to thank God for all the things that you have been given as a gift from God. In a consumer society, through all the advertising and subtle, seductive approaches to it, you've got an iPhone, but you haven't got a 4th generation one. The consumer society is in fact the most efficient mechanism ever devised for the creation and distribution of unhappiness. Although religious leaders have in recent years used increasingly strong language to condemn the banks and politicians over the financial crisis and the gap between rich and poor, few have directly criticized ordinary people for their materialism. In an attempt to highlight the link between faith and happiness, Lord Sachs pointed out that on the Jewish day of rest, the Shabbos, the devout spend time with their families rather than spending money in shops. The Chief Rabbi, who has represented Britain's 300,000 Jews since 1991, and is due to step down into 2013, said, "Therefore the answer to the consumer society is the world of faith, which the Jews call the world of Shabbos, where you can shop and you can't spend, and you spend your time with things that matter with family. Unless we get back to these values, we will succeed in making our children and grandchildren even unhappier." He concluded by telling the 70th anniversary meeting of the Council of Christians and Jews held at Crosby Hall in London, "I think this is a great opportunity for faith and a great moment for Jews and Christians to come together and, leading from the front, embrace those of other faiths. Without friendship between faiths, we will drown." I apologize for reading all of that, but I felt I couldn't take a segment out because that would have affected what Lord Sachs was trying to say. So where does Advent fit in this fostering of an egocentric culture? Well, Advent, as you know, is the preparation, the arrival of, the coming of the Christ child. And that Christ child came not in riches to a palace of dreams, but came as a helpless babe, we believe born in a stable, to a young virgin woman called Mary. And the central heating they had was the breath of an ox and an ass. But the angels were present, singing glory to God on high, and peace to men of good will. So what is the Advent story? Well, the Advent story, I believe, for me, as one trying to live the simple life in the footsteps of the barefoot Galilean, adopting the simplicity of Francis and little Thérèse of Lisieux, even Gandhi, is to say, keep it simple. Materialism, it does not bring happiness. I know from my years as a young man after I left the monastery back in the late 70s, where you wanted the latest hairstyle, the latest fashion, and you'd save to buy the best-selling LP of your favourite artist. But that excitement soon wanes, doesn't it? But today, the cosmic Christ with Gaia is calling all of us into agape, is calling us into a fruitful union where we too can behold the face of God. Not the God for Christians or for Jews, but the God for all faiths. And this is a momentous time, a coming together of all faiths, where we respect one another, where we acknowledge one another, because we are all children of the one true, loving, supreme God. And who am I to alienate a brother or sister because they do not share my Christian beliefs? That would be an indictment against me. And I know many religious leaders have cut themselves off from interspiritual dialogue, and I think this is through fear. But Advent for me is a time for my spiritual preparation for the coming of the Christ child into my interior stable, and to offer him sanctuary and to feed that with divine love by nurturing a non-egocentric culture through prayer, through love, through generosity, through compassion. So I endorse all that Lord Sachs has said. And we have to be on our guard. And we have to be And hello, Brother Rob has just appeared there. I can see him through the door. And there you have it, Rob.